Have you ever noticed that the people who hurt you the most rarely look like villains in the moment? Think about it. Every time you have been betrayed, dismissed, misunderstood, or let down, it almost never came with a warning sign flashing in red. It came from someone ordinary, someone smiling, someone you trusted, and so you were left confused, not just by what they did, but by how blind you were to the possibility of it. This confusion is not a personal failing. It is simply what happens when we walk through life with the wrong expectations of other people, expecting consistency from creatures who are fundamentally inconsistent, expecting fairness from minds clouded by fear, expecting loyalty from bonds that were never tested. The Stoics understood this more clearly than almost anyone in history. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world during his lifetime, filled his private journal with reminders about how to deal with difficult, dishonest, and unpredictable people, not because he despised humanity, but because he had stopped being surprised by it. Epictetus, born into slavery, somehow achieved a level of inner freedom that most free men never touch, and his secret was simple. He stopped expecting people to be anything other than what they are. Today we explore 10 hard truths about people, truths that once accepted will quietly dismantle a large portion of your suffering. Stay with me, because the 10th truth is the one that changes how you see every relationship you have ever had. Before we begin, I want to be clear about something. These truths are not cynical. They are not an invitation to distrust everyone you meet or wall yourself off from connection. They are sober, clear-eyed observations that, once internalized, will make you calmer, less reactive, and far more at peace with the world as it actually is, not as you wish it were. The Stoics drew a sharp line between what is within our control and what is not. Other people's behavior, their honesty, their loyalty, their capacity for growth, none of that is within our control. Our own clarity about that fact is. Marcus Aurelius wrote privately about expecting figs in winter, a simple agricultural image with enormous psychological weight. Nature has seasons, and so do people. Expecting fruit from someone who is not in season to produce it is not a noble standard. It is a guaranteed disappointment. Seneca wrote, "Nothing happens to the wise man against his expectation." That sentence is not about predicting the future. It is about refusing to be shocked by the predictable patterns of human nature. These 10 truths are how you build that kind of expectation. Clear, sober, unshockable. Epictetus taught that the chief task in life is to separate what belongs to us from what belongs to others, and almost everything about other people's behavior belongs firmly in the second category. The moment you stop fighting that reality is the moment a great deal of unnecessary suffering simply falls away. Here are the 10 truths, and the discipline behind each one is something the Stoics practice daily. But before we get into truth number 1, if you are getting value from this, take 1 second right now and hit that like button. It costs you nothing, and it helps this content reach more people who need to hear it. And if you are not yet subscribed, do it now and ring the bell so you never miss a video like this one. I promise you, this one is worth staying with until the very end. All right, let us get into it. Truth number 1. Most people are not thinking about you at all. This is perhaps the most humbling and most liberating truth on this list. You walk through your days carrying an invisible assumption that other people are constantly evaluating you, judging your words, remembering your mistakes, forming permanent opinions about who you are based on a single interaction. The truth is almost the opposite. Most people are so consumed by their own anxieties, their own deadlines, their own internal monologue, that they spare you only a passing thought, if any thought at all. The awkward thing you said 3 years ago that still haunts you at 2 in the morning. The other person forgot it within the hour, if they even noticed it in the first place. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly in his meditations. He reminded himself again and again that other people's opinions of him were none of his business, and more importantly, that those opinions occupied far less of their minds than his ego liked to imagine. Each person is the main character of their own story, wrestling with their own fears, their own ambitions, their own private griefs. You are a side character in nearly every story, except your own. Once you accept this, something remarkable happens. The social anxiety that has quietly governed so many of your decisions begins to loosen its grip. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop fearing judgment that was never really being cast. Consider how much of your daily mental energy is spent managing an audience that, in truth, barely exists. the outfit you second-guessed before leaving the house, the message you rewrote 4 times before sending, the joke that didn't land at dinner, replayed in your mind for the rest of the night. In nearly every case, the person you were so worried about has already moved on to their own concerns. People are not thinking about you the way you fear. Let that truth set you free. This is not meant to diminish your importance to the people who genuinely love you. Those relationships are real, and within them, you do matter deeply. But the wider circle of acquaintances, co-workers, and strangers, whose imagined judgment so often governs our behavior, simply do not have the bandwidth to scrutinize us the way our anxious minds suggest. Once you internalize this, you can begin making decisions based on your own values rather than a phantom jury that was never really watching in the first place. Truth number 2. People will disappoint you because they are human, not because they are evil. Somewhere along the way, many of us absorbed the idea that disappointment from others is a sign of betrayal, that if someone lets us down, it must mean they were secretly cruel, secretly selfish, secretly working against us all along. But the Stoics had a different, more accurate view. Epictetus taught that people act according to what seems good to them in the moment, filtered through their own ignorance, their own pain, their own limited understanding. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it explains it. Most disappointment isn't malice, it's human limitation colliding with your expectations. Your friend forgets your birthday not because they don't love you, but because their mind is overloaded with their own crisis you may know nothing about. Your coworker takes credit for your idea, not necessarily because they are a villain, but because insecurity has twisted their sense of fairness. Seneca wrote extensively about forgiveness, not as weakness, but as wisdom. He pointed out that if we examine our own conduct honestly, we will find that we too have disappointed others, failed to live up to our own standards, and acted out of fear or pride more times than we'd like to admit. This truth doesn't mean tolerating abuse or excusing cruelty. It means releasing the shock and outrage that come from expecting humans to be something other than human. Once you accept that disappointment is woven into the fabric of every relationship, you stop being blindsided by it, and you can respond with wisdom rather than wounded surprise. Truth number 3. You cannot make anyone understand you if they are not willing to. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to be understood by someone who has already decided not to understand you. You explain yourself again. You choose your words more carefully. You provide more context, more nuance, more evidence of your intentions. And still, nothing changes because the issue was never a lack of information. It was a lack of willingness. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, the line between what is ours to govern and what is not. Your words, your tone, your patience, your honesty, these are within your control. The other person's interpretation, their willingness to listen, their capacity for empathy in that moment, these are not. You can offer someone the clearest, most generous explanation of your actions, and if they have already built a narrative about who you are, your words will simply bounce off that narrative like rain off a closed window. This is maddening if you don't expect it. It is simply reality if you do. There's a particular kind of relief that comes the first time you genuinely internalize this. You stop rehearsing the perfect explanation that will finally make a difficult relative see your point of view. You stop drafting and redrafting messages, searching for the exact phrasing that will unlock someone's empathy. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that it was not his job to make bad men become good. It was only his job to act with integrity regardless of their response. Speak honestly. Act with integrity. And then release your grip on the outcome of being understood. Because that outcome was never yours to control. This is where Stoic acceptance becomes active rather than passive. Accepting that you cannot force understanding doesn't mean you stop communicating altogether or retreat into bitter silence. It means you communicate once, clearly, with care, and then you let the outcome go. You stop measuring your own integrity by whether someone else finally gets it. Your integrity was never contingent on their comprehension in the first place. Truth number 4. People reveal their character slowly, then all at once. It is tempting to believe that people show you who they are immediately. In the first conversation, the first impression, the first gesture of kindness or rudeness. But character is rarely revealed that quickly. Instead, it tends to leak out gradually, in small inconsistencies, until eventually the pattern becomes undeniable. A person might be charming for months before a moment of pressure reveals how they treat people when something doesn't go their way. The Stoics were deeply concerned with testing character under pressure because they understood that comfort reveals very little about a person, while difficulty reveals almost everything. Seneca wrote about how prosperity and ease can disguise a person's true nature, while adversity strips away the performance and shows what's actually underneath. This is why he advised paying closer attention to how people behave when they are stressed, inconvenienced, or denied something they want, rather than how they behave when everything is going smoothly and costs them nothing. This truth asks you to slow down your judgments, both positive and negative. Don't crown someone a saint after one kind act, and don't condemn someone as a villain after one bad day. But do pay attention over time. Patterns matter more than incidents. Once you accept that true character emerges gradually, you stop being shocked when someone eventually shows you who they really were all along. The signs were usually there. You simply needed enough time and enough attention to see them. This truth is also a call to patience with yourself in the process of discernment. It is not naive or foolish to take time to understand someone's true character. It is wise. The Stoics did not advocate blind trust or constant suspicion. They advocated careful, sober observation, allowing time and repeated interaction to reveal what surface-level impressions cannot. Truth number 5. Most people are operating from fear, not strategy. When someone behaves in a way that seems cruel, manipulative, or strange, our minds often jump to the conclusion that they must be operating from a calculated, strategic place. Surely they planned this. Surely there is some grand design behind their behavior. In reality, most human behavior, especially the ugly kind, comes from fear rather than strategy. Fear of being inadequate, fear of being abandoned, fear of being exposed as less capable, less intelligent, or less worthy than they present themselves to be. The Stoics taught that vice, or destructive behavior, comes from a kind of internal disturbance, what they called passions running unchecked by reason. This doesn't mean every harmful action should be met with sympathy instead of boundaries. Understanding the root of someone's behavior is not the same as accepting that behavior, but understanding does change how you respond emotionally. There is a story, possibly more legend than fact but instructive nonetheless, about Cato the Younger, a Stoic statesman known for his unshakable composure. When confronted by a man who spat in his face out of pure rage, Cato simply wiped his face and replied that he would now have to prove to the world that the man's anger had been baseless by refusing to respond in kind. Epictetus often pointed out that those who insult or wrong us are, in a real sense, more unfortunate than we are, because they are the ones living inside the disturbance, the agitation, the fear-driven distortion. We are simply standing nearby, sometimes catching the consequences of their internal storm. Seeing fear underneath behavior removes the bewildering mystery from human cruelty, and bewilderment is often what makes pain so much harder to bear. Truth number 6. You will never get an apology from some people, and you have to be at peace with that. There is a particular kind of waiting that quietly consumes years of a person's life, waiting for an apology that will never come, waiting for someone to finally see what they did, finally acknowledge the damage, finally say the words that would make the pain feel validated and complete. The hard truth the Stoics would want you to sit with is this: some people will never apologize, not because the wrong they did wasn't real, but because acknowledging it would require a level of self-awareness, humility, or accountability they simply do not have access to. Expecting an apology from someone who lacks the internal architecture to give one is like expecting a locked door to open simply because you deserve to walk through it. This is not the same as saying you don't deserve an apology. You very well might. But your healing cannot be made contingent on something entirely outside your control. There is also a subtler trap hidden inside the wait for an apology. The longer you wait, the more power you unknowingly hand to the person who wronged you. Your peace becomes hostage to their potential growth, their potential honesty. Closure, in the way pop psychology often describes it, as something given to you by another person, is largely a myth. Real closure is something you build internally, often without the other person's participation at all. The apology may never come, and you can still be whole. The Stoic response is not to stop caring about justice or truth. It is to separate the truth of what happened, which you can hold with complete clarity, from your emotional liberation, which cannot be allowed to depend on someone else's character development. Epictetus would say that the other person's capacity for honesty is simply not within your control, no matter how justified your expectation of it might be. What remains within your control is how you carry the truth forward, whether you let it calcify into permanent resentment, or whether you fold it into your own wisdom and continue moving through life with your dignity fully intact. Truth number 7. People will judge you based on their own insecurities, not your actual character. It is remarkably common to be criticized for qualities that have very little to do with who you actually are, and a great deal to do with what the critic feels lacking in themselves. The person who calls you arrogant may be wrestling with their own feelings of inferiority. The person who calls you lazy may be quietly terrified of their own lack of discipline. Judgment often functions as a mirror turned outward. Epictetus taught that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about those events. And those judgments are shaped entirely by the internal furniture of the person making them, their fears, their wounds, their unresolved insecurities. This means that when someone criticizes you harshly, especially in ways that feel disproportionate or oddly specific, it is worth asking not what is wrong with me, but what might this reveal about them. This is not an invitation to dismiss all criticism defensively. Some criticism is accurate and valuable, and the Stoics valued honest feedback as a tool for self-improvement. But a great deal of criticism says more about the critic's internal world than about your actual character. Marcus Aurelius advised separating the event, in this case someone's harsh words, from your judgment about what those words mean about you. The words themselves cannot harm you. Only your internal agreement with a false narrative can. This truth offers a particular kind of protection. When you stop assuming that every judgment leveled against you is an objective, accurate assessment, you free yourself from carrying the emotional weight of other people's projections. You can examine criticism calmly, keep what is useful, and release what is simply someone else's fear wearing your name. Truth number 8. Loyalty is rare, and you should stop being shocked when it's missing. We are taught, often through stories and cultural narratives, that loyalty is the default state of human relationships, and that betrayal is the rare exception. The Stoics, and history itself, suggest the opposite is closer to the truth. Loyalty, the kind that holds steady through inconvenience, sacrifice, or social cost, is genuinely rare. Most people are loyal only as long as loyalty is convenient. Seneca wrote extensively about the fickleness of crowds and the unreliability of friendships built on convenience rather than virtue. He observed that many people who call themselves friends disappear the moment friendship requires real cost, whether that cost is time, reputation, money, or comfort. This truth is not meant to make you trust no one. It is meant to help you stop being repeatedly shocked when fair-weather relationships reveal themselves to be exactly that. There's a related idea worth sitting with here. Loyalty tested only by comfort is not really loyalty at all. It's simply convenience wearing a more flattering name. Once you accept that consistent, costly loyalty is rare, you stop measuring all relationships against an inflated standard that very few people actually meet, and you begin to genuinely treasure the rare individuals who do show up through inconvenience and cost, because you finally understand how uncommon that quality truly is. It also changes how you invest your own loyalty. If true loyalty is rare and valuable, it should be reserved for people who have demonstrated, through their own actions over time, that they are capable of it. Loyalty given indiscriminately to people who haven't earned it through their own consistency is not virtue. It is simply naivety waiting to be disappointed. When you notice a relationship beginning to thin out the moment it requires sacrifice, resist the urge to take it as a personal failure on your part. It is simply information, valuable information, about what kind of bond you are actually in. Truth number 9. You cannot reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. There is a particular kind of frustration that comes from arguing with someone whose position was never built on logic in the first place. You present facts, you offer evidence, you construct careful, rational arguments, and none of it moves them, because their position was never built from reason. It was built from identity, fear, tribal belonging, or emotional necessity. The Stoics, despite their deep reverence for reason and logic, were also remarkably clear-eyed about how rarely human beings actually operate from pure reason. Epictetus taught that most people are guided by impressions, assumptions absorbed from their environment that they have never actually examined critically. Trying to dislodge those assumptions with logic alone is often like trying to cut water with a knife. If a belief was adopted for emotional reasons, to belong to a group, to avoid a painful truth, to protect a fragile identity, it will rarely be abandoned simply because better information was presented. This doesn't mean truth doesn't matter or that you should stop speaking honestly. It means recalibrating your expectations about what a single conversation can accomplish. Your job, as the Stoics saw it, is to speak your truth clearly and with integrity. It is not your job to force a transformation in someone else's mind, especially not in real time, especially not through sheer force of argument. This truth also offers a kind of relief. You are not failing as a communicator simply because someone refuses to be persuaded. Some positions are fortified by something far stronger than logic: identity, fear, belonging. Recognizing this allows you to stop blaming yourself for not finding the right words, and instead accept that some doors were never going to open from the outside, no matter how skillfully you knocked. And before we move into the 10th and final truth, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something. You have made it through 9 of these already. Most people click away long before this point. Most people scroll on the moment something asks more of them than entertainment. But you stayed, and that says something real about you. It tells me this is not just passive listening for you. Something in this video is speaking to something in you. So genuinely, thank you for being here. And I promise this final truth is the one that ties every other truth on this list together. Truth number 10. Most people will forget you, long before you forget them. And that is simply how life works. This final truth is perhaps the most humbling of all, but also among the most freeing. We tend to imagine that the people who have mattered deeply to us will hold us in their memory with the same weight and permanence that we hold them. We assume that the friendships, the connections, the shared moments meant as much to them as they meant to us. The truth is more sobering. Most people, even those who once played significant roles in our lives, eventually move on, fill their minds with new chapters, new relationships, new priorities, and the memory of you slowly fades into something distant and occasional, if it remains at all. This is not usually cruelty. It is simply the nature of a finite human mind, moving through a long life filled with countless people and experiences. The Stoics were deeply familiar with impermanence. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about how quickly even the most celebrated names of history fade into obscurity, how briefly anyone is truly remembered, and how foolish it is to build your sense of meaning on the permanence of other people's memory of you. He found this thought not depressing, but clarifying. If permanence in others' minds was never guaranteed, then chasing it was never a wise foundation for peace. This truth asks you to release a particular kind of quiet grief, the grief of mattering less to others than they mattered to you. And while it can sting, accepting it as a natural feature of human life, rather than a personal indictment of your worth, changes its entire emotional weight. It also asks you to redirect your energy. If your significance in someone else's memory was never fully within your control, then the only sensible place left to invest your energy is in how you show up now, in your own integrity, your own values, your own presence in the relationships you currently have. Now let us bring all 10 together. Most people are not thinking about you at all. People will disappoint you because they are human, not because they are evil. You cannot make anyone understand you if they are not willing to. People reveal their character slowly, then all at once. Most people are operating from fear, not strategy. You will never get an apology from some people, and you have to be at peace with that. People will judge you based on their own insecurities, not your actual character. Loyalty is rare, and you should stop being shocked when it's missing. You cannot reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. And most people will forget you long before you forget them. And that is simply how life works. None of these truths are meant to make you bitter or distrustful. They are meant to do what Stoic philosophy has always tried to do: strip away illusion so that reality can be met with clear eyes and a steady heart. The Stoics did not believe in passive transformation. They believed in active, daily, deliberate work on the self. Through consistent reflection, you can become someone fundamentally different from who you were yesterday. And one of the most powerful places to begin that transformation is here, with how you see other people. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." Not the disappointment from last year, not the apology you are still waiting for, the present moment, these 10 truths, now. What would change in your relationships if you simply expected less perfection and noticed more clearly who actually shows up? What would you stop carrying if you accepted that some doors were never going to open, no matter how long you knocked? You don't have to answer those questions out loud. Sit with them. That, in itself, is the beginning of the practice. If this video spoke to something in you, if even one of these 10 truths made you pause and think, that is already the practice beginning. Don't scroll past that feeling. Sit with it. If you found value here, hit the like button. It helps this video reach more people who genuinely need it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone who needs to hear that their disappointment in people is not a personal failing. It is simply the cost of being human among other humans. Leave a comment below telling me which of the 10 truths hit hardest, or which one you are still struggling to accept. Until next time, expect less, forgive more, and remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. That is the real work behind everything we have covered today. Not becoming someone who expects nothing from others, but becoming someone whose own integrity no longer depends on what others choose to give back. Carry that with you long after this video ends. Stay grounded, stay clear-eyed, stay free. And one final thought before you go. None of these 10 truths require you to become harder, colder, or more guarded with the people in your life. If anything, they ask the opposite, that you hold people more loosely, expect them more accurately, and love the ones who show up for you that much more fiercely, because you finally understand just how rare real presence, real loyalty, and real honesty actually are. The goal was never to expect nothing from people. The goal was to expect accurately, so that when kindness, loyalty, and honesty do show up, you recognize them for the rare gifts they actually are, instead of taking them for granted as the baseline you were owed all along.